Well, thank you, Chip and Rob, for your kind words. Let's go back to that picture you were wondering about. One more, back to the lake there. So this, just to let everybody know, since Chip was asking, is New Zealand. And it's a wonderful place to visit. Last year, Lucia and I took our boys here. My boys love Lord of the Rings. So we called it Lord of the Rings Geek Fest 2014. And we saw every site where they filmed The Hobbit, including Hobbiton itself. So this is, Chip, just to answer your question, absolutely. It is true, I am a New England Patriots fan. I'm also a Boston Red Sox fan, but I am interested in, I think, was there air being let out of a ball? I don't know. I am, however, very open to somebody helping me understand how a pitcher can hit. So I'm used to a designated hitter. So Cincinnati Red fans, please, when I do arrive, I need your help. Lucia and I and my boys are thrilled to be joining Country Day. It began, my knowledge of this school, through an introduction by Julie Fleischman. And then, just a few days later, I first arrived at Country Day on Spirit Day. And it wasn't planned, but the power of the community and the spirit of the community, I felt from the very first moment I stepped on this campus. And it was absolutely wonderful. So I don't know if it was meant to be, but it certainly felt that way to me. I told Chip as I left that I came intrigued, but I left very excited. And that was my first, I think, of 4 visits for interviews. I came quite a few times and came to know the school well. I would like to begin my comments tonight with some thank yous, because during those visits, and so far during this visit, Lucia and I have been very warmly received. I'd like to start with Julie and John and Chip, who led the search. They were communicated with me. And I know that there was excitement for my candidacy, but I think that what Chip and John and Julie did for me is to help me understand how we might be able to come and join this community. So they and the search committee did a wonderful job of just not getting only to know me, but also to helping introduce Country Day to me and my family. I'd like to thank the community members. I met many different types of people, many different stakeholders. I met trustees, I met teachers, I met administrators, I met students, alumni, staff, and each and every one, it's interesting, Rob, to hear you talk about my day, but everybody had a story to tell. And the stories all had a common theme about how committed all of these individuals were and are to Country Day. And that really helped us understand the strength of this school. And I'd like to thank Rob. Rob is absolutely right. We've been Skyping for the last few months, and I guess my only regret is that Rob's leaving, because I've really enjoyed working with him. Well, maybe not that we're distraught, because I know school can only have one head, but I really want to thank Rob, you for your full support and the support of his office, and working with Ashley as well. And I wrote this, and I want to thank you, Rob, for the kindness of your person. You're a good person, and I've come to know that very, very quickly. And so we had a slide earlier to leave the campground in a better place than it was, and I certainly feel absolutely fortunate that Country Day is in a very good place. So I know, as Chip said, that Rob will be honored in the weeks and months to come. I won't have the chance to do that, because when I come back, Rob will no longer be here. So I'd just like to thank you, Rob, for everything that you've done. I know we'll Skype some more, so we're not done yet. Senioritis hasn't set in yet. But I would like to personally thank Rob for all the work that he has done to put Country Day in such a wonderful place for somebody like me to be able to come in. I'm very honored, so thank you. what I hope to do tonight is to talk a little bit about why I am so excited about Country Day. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about my own belief in education. Many of you may recall Edward R. Murrow. He was a radio journalist in the 1950s, and he had a radio essay program called This I Believe. NPR picked up this program a few years ago, but it was a wonderful essay program where people would come in and read their essays, 5-minute essays from famous people to common people and everybody in between. And so what I'd like to do tonight is to share just some thoughts about education that I have. And yesterday, I saw, as I was getting on the plane, the last plane out of Newark, that happened to leave at 6 in the morning to Cincinnati, a T-shirt. And on the T-shirt, this child walked by and it said, "My life is based on a real story." I thought that was rather clever. My life is based on a real story. And I was thinking, what is a real story? What is a real story? Because we're all living lives, but what is a real story? What is a successful life? And I was thinking about David Brooks. He is a New York Times columnist. And he once gave a talk, and he said that we should live a life that is defined not by our resume, but by our eulogy. And so what he meant by that is to live a life where people will remember you for the strength of your character and not necessarily the skills or the talents that you have. And so we come to character through the choices we make, but not easy choices. Today, Rob brought me to lunch. Thanks again, Rob. And it was an easy choice between the chicken pot pie soup or the tomato soup. The chicken pot pie soup was fantastic. But that didn't help me make my character. I think that character is made through difficult choices that we face every day, and that a good education can instill within a student. And I'll give you a couple of examples. In 1903, the Wright brothers launched the first airplane. They were from Dayton, Ohio, but they launched that plane first in North Carolina. 10 years later, or 11 years later, in 1914, World War I broke out. And it was amazing, between 1903 and 1914, what had happened to aviation. By the time the First World War began, planes were being used in the war. They were being used for reconnaissance. So they hadn't, at the very beginning of the war, been designed to be fighting machines. But it was a very dangerous business. When planes first went up, cavalry was no longer being used in World War I, so they would fly behind enemy lines. And what would also happen is they would at first wave to each other and smile. But as the war became very brutal, they began to engage in hand-to-hand combat, where they began, believe it or not, first by trying to rope the other plane with a grappling hook. And then at one point, they actually were trying to shoot each other with pistols. It was later in the war then they tried to coordinate machine guns, but what happened is, unfortunately, the timing wasn't very good at first, and some of the planes would shoot off their propellers with tragic consequences. And actually, most of the men who died in World War I did so through training, because the planes were so very, very new in this arena of war. And I tell this story because my grandfather, actually at that point, was in the American Army, and he chose with his older brother to leave the Army. He had a choice in front of him because he wanted to join the war earlier. He felt it was his calling. He was a university student, and he left training in college and actually went up to Canada and joined the Royal Air Force. and then went over to England and was part of this battle. And he and his brother, thank God, survived, but they became aces in this war. They each had 17 kills in this war. And when I think of my grandfather, I think of that decision that he made. He did not have to leave college. He did not have to go across the ocean. He did not have to join in what was at that point one of the most dangerous types of training that was happening. He was never necessarily proud of what he did, but he felt that that was a compelling, important choice that he had to make. So I reflect when I think of hard choices, and God forbid that any of our students, any of our children have to make a choice like that. But I also think about the choices that we have at school. Another example I have is that I used to work at the school newspaper when I was in high school. And the Philippian, much like the scroll here, by the way, is fantastic, a really good paper. Elizabeth Miller wrote an article on me, and I went online, I read about it. It was right below Taylor Swift and right above the mathletics competition. So I knew I had good placement. But I remember I had one of those choices too as well. I remember as a 10th grader, I was the layout editor, and back in the late 80s, there were no computers to make newspapers. A huge sheet of print would come out. We'd use X-Acto knives, and we would paste the text onto this big piece of paper. And I remember always going to the seniors, because a 10th grader to a 10th grader, a senior is a very senior and scary person. And I remember saying to this senior at some point, we would always go back and say, does it look good? Does it look right? Does it look good? Does it look right? And when spring came along, all of a sudden, as the seniors were getting ready to leave, I remember vividly at one point saying to a senior, once again, I'd laid it out, does it look right? And he said, I don't know, you're the copy editor. Well, what did that mean? Well, that meant all of a sudden I had a choice to make. Was I going to go to another senior? Was I going to continue in the same pattern of behavior, asking somebody else to help me define what was successful for the paper? Was I going to take a chance and actually begin to lead at that point? That's exactly what I did. To many, many people, it's a small little thing, but to me it was really very important in my own development. So if you think about it, if you think about some of the choices that we have to make, whether they are at the very grand scale, like my grandfather did when he chose to enlist and to go and to fly in World War I, or whether it was a choice that I myself made as a 10th grader when given responsibility, when given the opportunity to take responsibility. These are hard choices. And this, to me, is what education is about. Education is about developing knowledge and skills, but it's also about developing the character to make decisions between what is right and what is right, not necessarily between what is right and wrong. And these are the kind of choices that our children today have to make in an increasingly challenging world. So why Cincinnati Country Day School? Well, I ask you to take a look at the motto right behind where I am standing tonight. Praise of virtue in action. So the mission of this school is based on very much creating good people, creating people with character, creating people who will make choices when nobody else is looking, and making the right choice in the hard situation. And so when I came during that Spirit Week, Rob talks about the joy of learning, and I really did feel that joy in the community, genuinely. But I also felt a deeper purpose that is found in the mission of this school. And I heard it in the voices of all of those people that I spoke with. That you, soon to be we, and I'm excited about that, are committed to children and students understanding how to make important choices when faced with difficult situations, because these are the kind of people that we're going to need in the future. The spirit was fantastic, again, with the trustees, the administrators, the teachers, the parents, and the students, all asking really good questions. I actually met today with lifers. I asked if I could meet with all the seniors who will be leaving this year, because I am not going to have a chance to teach them or be with them next year. And they all looked at me kind of sideways and said, "You better take care of this school." They didn't exactly say it that way, but I could see it in their eyes. I could read their body language. I was also attracted to the educational program. And again, the students today spoke to me about that, with a focus on excellence in education, a focus on innovation, and a focus on whole child development. And yes, it is true, I may wish to become a Bengals fan, because Cincinnati too, wow, I didn't know much about the city, but have very quickly come to understand what a wonderful place this is going to be to live. Shanghai has been a wonderful place too, but as I told the search committee, I'm really looking forward to blue skies and clean air. I'm looking forward to my children having a 30-second commute as opposed to an hour and a half each way, each day. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know this community and getting to know this city. So the future ahead, I know that in transition, there's a great deal of excitement, but also some trepidation as well, and I can understand that. But when I think about the future of Country Day, I think about my own belief in education and what I see here in Country Day. And as I was speaking today with Stephanie Lubers, we were talking this morning about the overlap. And I really do feel that this, I believe, what I was talking to you about earlier, with what Country Day in its mission, in the motto of the school, align well. So I believe that that is where my beginning will be in the mission of the school, and trying to try to determine the best way to continue to balance history of the school and traditions with the need to prepare students well for the coming century. I think there is excellent momentum. So I said a moment ago, Rob, that the work that you have done has been excellent, and much of the work that Rob talks about in terms of future planning, I will be working with the Board of Trustees in completing. And I think planning is very, very important. Planning is important when resources are limited, when education today has so many different ways that it can be offered and delivered. I think you have to be very careful trying new things and trying to innovate in ways, but also never forgetting that the foundation of education is very strong here at Country Day. And so trying to have a balance between that, between the foundation and through innovation. And I think that one of the most important ways that I will begin that is listening. And Rob said going on a listening tour, and beginning with My Day's stories. I'd like to hear your My Day's stories. Whether you're a parent or an alum or a teacher or an administrator, or we have maybe a few students here tonight, that is where I will begin, with the My Day story, so I can understand what my Country Day means to you, so that very quickly we can become our Country Day. So I'm thrilled to be here. I am so happy that I was able to get on that last flight yesterday, and I'd like to let you all know that it was Rob working on his computer, tracking the storm, who got me thinking quickly about coming. I would like to, again, invite anybody who has, one more. There we go. If you do have time to begin the conversation and letting me know about your country day and my day, your day at Country Day, lower school, middle school, and upper school over the next 3 days, that would be great. I welcome you. So I began my comments tonight with thanks. I'd like to end them with an invitation to share your understanding of this school and what makes this school so wonderful with me and with Lucia, so that we can come and join and become part of this community, which we feel we've already begun. So thank you. It's great to be here, and I am absolutely just thrilled to be here. I'll say it again. Thank you.